So we're live. Welcome, guys. Welcome, Emmanuel. We're back with you for Personal Finance Rant. So actually, we already pre-recorded this, and the audio didn't work out. Been having a few issues with the audio, so we've actually re-recorded it. So we should be much better the second time. But actually, it's stuff we deal with in day in, day out. But I'm actually really excited about today because I think today, for me, is whenever you're starting out and you got yourself in perhaps some debt, or you really want to change your life, your financial life, I think this is the first step, if you like. I mean, the decision is the first step, but actually to make a measurable difference and quite a substantial difference by using one of these models and actually sticking to it, it just changes everything. And I think for me, if anyone said, what's the most important thing, I'd say track your expenses for at least 30 days. And then I'd say split up your take-home wage or your income in one of these models. And I think, that for me is, if you did nothing but those two, I think you're well on the way. How about, what's your thoughts on these?
I think these are great models, and I think more importantly, because of the time that we're in now with coronavirus, people are actually able to manage their finance in a very different way than they've ever done before, because they're not spending as they would have done previously. So to try and put one of these models in place now is probably the easiest time to be able to put something like this in place. So I think the different models about money allocation is always something that I've done. And especially now, it's proving to be a really good model to actually go that way.
And you're exactly right. Putting it in place now, because everyone's cash flow is in turmoil, and whether it's in turmoil or not, everyone's cash flow has changed. They're not going out spending money there, so now's a good time to bet in those disciplines. Absolutely, and you can make a massive change, and this can really be. I mean, it's interesting. I'm chatting to a lot of my mates about the fitness side of things, and we're all getting committed to the fitness, and spending a couple of hours a day and doing that, running 10Ks and doing these sort of things. But actually, if you did the same thing with finances, it's amazing where you could get to. But I love it. I think the biggest challenge with this is not actually sitting down and working out the numbers. The mathematics of this is really easy. It's the actual discipline of following through and actually not spending money where you shouldn't be and allocating money where you should be. And I think for the biggest thing here is once you've worked out the maths and actually allocated that money and either put it into jars or whatever, whichever you decide, it's to actually, absolutely commit to it and do it and make sure that you make it happen and stick to it, because life is going to present you lots and lots of distractions, lots of things that need funding and emergencies and friends that offer you to go here. And I think that's one of the big distractions in a lot of this is the friends and the family and the what appear to be emergencies that actually aren't. They're just tests on your road or on your path to finances.
Yeah, over the last few weeks, I've tried to use a different word. Instead of discipline, the word routine. When you make something routine, it's just things that you do automatically. When it's a discipline, it means it's a bit more difficult, or it sounds more difficult. In reality, it isn't. So I have a routine every morning. I wake up, I have my coffee, I do my workout between 1 and 1.5 hours every single morning. It's a routine. Some people might say that's a discipline. Because it's my routine, it becomes a habit for me and needs a discipline. So people do the same thing with their finances. They make it routine, it becomes a discipline automatically.
Yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, I love the word discipline, and that's because military background and all that sort of stuff, and that's what I've grown up with, from very young. But you're right. Discipline, routine, doesn't matter what you call it. It's as long as you stick to something, that you commit to it and stick to it, you'll get the result. But it won't be overnight. It won't be something, you don't form a habit by just, going, right, I made the decision, done it once, I've got the habit now. You have to create that routine or that discipline, so 100%. So the way we're going to structure this is, because there's 4 different models, and in actual fact, there's not 4 different models. There is probably hundreds of different models. But interestingly, is that when we were talking about this and we were putting the content together, totally separately. You grew up in the UK, I grew up in Australia. I've, live in Singapore, and I've moved lived in the UK for a decade. But actually, the approach and the models were very similar. The words we use are very similar. It's amazing how it doesn't matter where you grew up. This is about how you manage your money. And I'm sure, yes, you can fine tune little things, and different people have different ideas. We're going to give you 4 different ideas of different people who have said, right, let's try and do it this way, or do it this way, or do it this way. But we'll start off with the simplest. And actually, the one that I most use is the simplest. And actually, it's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon that talks about it. And what it talks about is simply allocating, if you take your take-home pay and you allocate it using percentages, okay? And in fact, most of them are like this. They use percentages as opposed to actual figures, all right? So if we have a look here, what you're going to see is this is how The Richest Man in Babylon. It talks about 10% for the future, 20% for the past, 70% for living, okay? In other words, the present. Now, what do we mean by the future? That means that's money that you're not going to spend. It's not your money, it's the future you's money, or you money. So the idea is that you're going to turn that into initially savings up to a certain point, then you're going to convert that to being investment, and then that is what's going to grow your wealth, okay? But more than that, and I'll explain the second one. So the second one is the 20% for the past. Oftentimes, a lot of us have got into debt, and that debt weighs us down, okay? And effectively, so what we want to look at doing is, with this 10, 20, 70, is 10% goes to the future. That's our investment. 20% is the past. That's the debt side. And then the other side is the 70%, which is what we live on now. So we allocate 70% to live on. Now, most people, when they first hear this, they go, hold on a sec. There's no way I can possibly do that because my debts are already more than 20%, and there's no way I can survive on 70%. And see this credit card? Well, every month that balance goes up rather than comes down. But the reality is you've got to work through this. And there's a number of different things we can do. And we've talked about how to make more money, and increase your income side. We've also talked about how to pay down your debts quicker as well. So you can check out other videos on that. So the 10 is the future, 20 is the past, and the 70% is the present. And if you do that, it takes about 1 to 3 months, and it just becomes routine. It becomes that that thing that you just do all the time. You do it naturally. It becomes part of you. And the great thing I love about this is, with straight away when you got that 20% past, once that's looked after, and you've got the accelerated debt spending plan or debt plan, they're great. But what it does, if you've got lots of debt and no assets and no wealth and no savings, you're constantly focused on debt. But what this does, if you earn $2,000 a month, and you put aside 10%, that's $200 a month going into a savings account, you now have something to focus on. The 200, and then the 400, and then the 600, and then the 800, and then the 1,000. And at the 1,000, that's the point at which I start thinking about investment. Yeah. So it's very, for me, it's very simple. It's a great way to start out. It doesn't necessarily, and this book is from years and years ago. We're talking early 1900s. It was written. But the reality is, the modern takes on it will go through sort of as we go through now. So, mate, any thoughts on that? Any comments?
Yeah, to start with, it's a very, very simple formula to get people started. You don't have to be great to get started. You have to get started to become great.
Yep.
So you've really got to put yourself into a routine so you understand money. And when you start managing money, it's amazing how quickly things start to accelerate.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So we'll go into the next one, and so the next one you'll see is slightly different. It's actually probably the granddaddy of all personal development. Jim Rohn is the guy who actually was the mentor to Tony Robbins, who is if you like our generation's most prevalent and well-known personal development person, and so what he talks about is 70% for living, very similar to mine, and then he talks about 10% active investing, emergency and opportunity. In other words, if emergency things pop up, that's what the 10% is for, but also opportunity in investing. 10% for passive investing, okay, putting away and not worrying about it, and 10% for the community and the world, which might education, things like that. So you'll see it's a very similar split. So in some ways, it's not hard to go from The Richest Man in Babylon to Jim Rohn, and then you'll see the next ones, how it's sort of an evolution, a bit more technical, if you like, But yeah, this one, realistically, 70% you live on, and then you've got, if you look, active investing, passive investing, and then you've got the community in the world. And the community might be tithing, it might be, doing good deeds, it might be whoever knows. That's there. So
I think with this model, you're looking at, again, Jim is giving you less money to live on in the past that you're re-evaluating where you are. 10% includes your debts. So the 10% the active investing, emergency opportunities, your passive investing, those are things that you're growing. Your community and the world could be charity, but it could also be giving you time, effort, energy, and making your education. That's giving back to the world. So it's a slightly different model where you're living on much less and you're investing much more in yourself.
But I think that's the key to any model is, you're going to have to grow, you're going to have to change. Definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, the only way you know what to change, or a way to change, is to go out and learn and educate yourself. And I think, the basis of any of this is to go out and become a reader, is to go out and, question the things you're doing and see if there's better ways of doing it, that sort of thing. So, yeah. So that's the Jim Rohn model, okay? So we've got really simple, a little bit more technical, and then what we'll do, we'll jump straight into the next one, which is T. Harv Eker, another personal development person. And so basically, he talks about jars, okay? And literally, when he pitches this, they are jars, like jam jars. And what you do is, back in the day that I'm sure Emmanuel remembers, and I remember too, some of you youngsters might not remember, but we used to get paid in cash in literally what was called a pay packet, a yellow envelope. And on the front of it had your pay slip kind of thing. And basically what you would do is as soon as you got that money, you'd break it up into jars, okay? Or into, put money aside for this, money aside for this, because it was cash, and so that's where I imagine it come from. Nowadays, you probably have different bank accounts. You probably have a Revolut with multiple cards, or who knows what you've got these days with the amount of technology and that sort of stuff. But the principle remains the same, is that you're going to split up, as soon as that money comes in, you're going to split it up into, in this case, 50% necessities, 10% financial freedom, long-term savings, play, education, and giving. So you'll start to see that this splits that up a little bit more, but actually it's pretty much, again, for the same things or similar things, okay? What are your thoughts on this, mate?
Yeah, I think, again, this is another refinement of the model, but this takes it much deeper. So if you look at the first part, 50% necessities, that covers not only your rent and your mortgage, your living expenses, your normal day-to-day activity. You've then got 10% to invest for financial freedom for getting things right now over the short, medium term. Then you've got the long-term savings, things like maybe like the pension. But the nice thing about this, it has something that rewards yourself, because you can't keep discipline all the time.
No.
You've got to do nice things, when maybe you go to a restaurant or a holiday or other things like that. Play accounts where you do something, make yourself happy, so you feel that all the things that you're doing has a reward for it.
Yeah.
Education is very important. We're in now uncharted time. All of us are learning new skills, new things that we need to do. It's about reinvesting ourselves, whether it be technology, whether it be our education. That's an important part to have aside, that you can do that on a regular, consistent basis. And again, 10%, this is something that's in most religions. You give 10% to the less privileged, more needy, and certainly where we are now, that's certainly happening in the country. So you can see the importance of being able to live on less, which it's all about. This is about changing your lifestyle so you have a great life. So we're in lockdown, most of us are in lockdown, we are living on less. And we're having a better quality of life with our loved ones, and we're making connections. So people can live on less, even if you're furloughed and it's just on your 80% salary. Yeah. You're living with that, so you can do it when you need to do it. So I think this is allowing people to readjust and to rethink things they've always done in a very different way. So there's a lot of positivity that I think will come out of this, not just all the negative stuff. There's going to be a lot of positive stuff too.
Yeah, 100%. And I think with this model, this is sort of a more modern day take on the original model. because we've sort of broken it up in. But I think, the play there, I mean, the problem with most of us is that we actually don't have any structure to it. And so the play tends to go, up and up and up. And that actually is what keeps us poor because, and I've seen this many times with many of my mates who are financially, free and what I would say wealthy and live a lifestyle of their choosing. And if you look at them and you speak to them, they're very disciplined about how they deal with money. But most of them have enough money that, if we go out and we go to dinner, they're not worried about, the right-hand side of the menu where the prices are. They're worried about the left-hand side of the menu. They're not worried about when they go out with the boys about having to shout a second round of, drinks for the boys and that sort of stuff. And they go on holidays. They go to nice places and things like that. And a lot of people think that they're lucky. In my experience, it's never been luck. It's been getting a program like this and actually adhering to it for long enough so it becomes part of you, and then you get the results, and then the results lead to the lifestyle. And I think the problem is with a lot of society today is with a credit card, we can have the lifestyle now, but the problem is we end up paying for it and we end up paying double. And that's a problem.
I like lots of really motivational phrases. This is one that I've always loved, is that if people do make sacrifice for a few years, like most people can't, they'll live a life for the rest of their life that most people can't.
Yeah.
So it's making those sacrifices now for a short period of time so you can have the lifestyle that most people can't, and making those sacrifices now. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah. And I think one of the other points that I'll make too is the guys I know with money and the guys that I know that have largely, got this the money situation sorted and it's never sorted. And that's the point I'll make, is that society tells us that there is this elusive passive income that we can just sit around on a beach for our whole lives and not have to do anything and not be responsible and that. I've never met a guy like that. And I've never met a successful person like that. Most successful person, they continue to do the things that got them to that situation even after they probably don't have to. So could they sit on a beach? Yeah, they could. But in my experience, personally, I can sit on a beach for about 3 or 4 days before I'm going stir crazy, and then I need to go do something, So for me, a holiday is not about sitting on a beach, and actually after about 2 weeks, doesn't matter where I am sick of the place. I want to go back to my businesses and I want to go back to my relationships and, that sort of stuff, And so, you'll probably find that too. So this is not about, this elusive, passive income, sit on the beach sort of thing. This is about creating a lifestyle, where you have choices, whatever those choices are. It may be that you want to sit on a beach for 2 months, in Koh Phangan or, Koh Samui or wherever in the world, But yeah, so let's have a look at the next one. So this is T. Harv Eker's one. And then if we go to the next one, which is, funnily enough, Immanuel's one. And so this is straight out of his book. So actually, in both my book and also Immanuel's book, we deal with debt and the allocation of this. So we talk about this sort of stuff. And obviously, your book's more, much more focused in on that. And it's a better book for the personal finance side, whereas mine's more of a property book. But so maybe, I guess, you probably can explain this one. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to explain. I wrote and came up with this sort of concept. So, being able to live on less is really where you want to be. So you can have a great life by living on less. You're not keeping up with the Joneses and just having a life simplified. The more simple you make your life, the happier you are. So, if you can live on 50% of your income, the rest of it becomes very easy. So living on 50%, including mortgage, include your rent, include any other kind of loans that you have, for simplifying stuff. And we'll talk about how you pay off debt a little bit further down the line, but in terms of allocation, 50% should be going to that. Then it leaves you 10%, similar to the T. Harv Eker principle, for long-term savings. Long-term savings could be your pension fund, it could be property that you're investing in. Short-term investment is where you can take the money and keep using it, returning it, maybe like an ISA or some kind of investment. 10%, definitely fun. If you're being disciplined, you're doing things on a regular basis, you should be rewarding yourself on a regular, consistent basis. Every 1 to 2 months, you spend all of that money monthly stuff, it might be 3 months off. So if you do something to really reward yourself, so every now and again, I'll go to a massage place, we get this the right way, and if people also have a full home massage, just something to be fun. So just do things on a regular fun basis. Education is really important. Education and charity, where you're making contributions to yourself and to the world at the same time. And for me, holidays are really important. Yeah. Not just having one holiday, it could be many holidays a year. Now, a holiday could be a weekend break with your partner. Making sure that you are enjoying life on a regular, consistent basis. So, again, I think we're going to put a download that people can get access to.
Yep.
Book that as a free download, all the information
in the link.
There.
Yep.
And more importantly, technology has made this really easy. With people like Santander or with Barclays, you can have multiple accounts and name them as they are. So you can have holiday fund, long-term savings, and you can do this automatically. And the easiest way that I've always found that you do it, when the income comes in, you set up standing orders automatically to all those accounts. You don't even have to think about it.
Yep.
The less you think about it, the easier it becomes.
Yeah, 100%. And just picking up on that point about the travel side of things and the 10% play, one of the things I do is I start the year, and generally I do it, this is in December, when I'm normally back in Australia, I'm with family, it's a bit settled down, there's no phone calls, there's no email, few emails. But and what I do is I have a big whiteboard with all the dates on it for the year, and I go and plan every single school holiday that I'm going on, where I'm going, all this sort of stuff. And then I have a number of groups of friends. So I've got my Aussie mates. So my Aussie mates may go somewhere in Australia. We went with Sundays last year sailing. I've got my Grand Prix crew, which every year I have the Grand Prix. I've got my Spain boys weekend. So I plan out these holidays, and by doing that, what it does automatically is I already have things to look forward to through the whole year. Now, obviously, coronavirus has put a bit of a dampener on that this year, but we'll see. We'll probably have to backload the last 6 months of the year. But the point is when you know that you've got that 10%, you can plan these things out, and by planning them out, actually you get the enjoyment of looking forward to them. When I first got over to the UK, I met up with a heap of Aussie mates, and so what we started doing is every 6 weeks we would go somewhere in the world. And what we'd do is we would actually, as soon as we come back, on the last day as we were flying home, we'd decide where we're going next. And then we'd go and book it all, so we had the 6 weeks before we went again to actually think about it and really look forward to it, and then we'd do it. And we did that for probably 2 or 3 or 4 years. And sometimes it didn't mean you went every 6 weeks, but it might have been, you skipped one and then we had another one, or maybe we didn't go for 12 weeks one time, or whatever, because Christmas you generally don't go. But doing that makes such a difference to this, because it makes the perceived pain initially of, geez, I'm having to survive unless I can't do what I want. All of a sudden, it gives you something to look forward to. You're just refocusing your focus onto something like that, rather than, oh no, I can't go out with my mates and drink 15 beers and not remember the next morning. I've only got a budget to drink 3 beers, or whatever it is, So I think it's really important. And that last point you made, which was, to automate it all, automate as much as possible. And I think, the next slide I was going to show you. So the challenge we have with this is, getting it done. And so the best way to get it done is to automate everything. So standing orders, that sort of stuff, You're going to notice the initial drop in your living. And because of that, that's when most people give up. Yeah. And I can tell you, in my experience, most people do give this up because at the end of the day, they think it's too hard, it's going to take too long, it doesn't work. I can tell you, every single person who has, for me, done it for 30 days, then creates that habit and continues on. What's your experience? Because you do it for 3 months, don't you? Your one, Emmanuel.
Yeah, so my spending pattern is normally 3 months, so you get a proper view of how their spending patterns are, between their credit cards, the standing orders, you get much more. Some people pay for their insurances annually, some people pay monthly, so you get a much better idea of their spending habits over a period of time. And that way you can do an average. So I like to look at 3 month periods, sometimes even longer, depending on how bad their finances are. So I like to create a pattern, see where the patterns are.
Yep.
History tells you what they've been doing and how you can make changes. And you know, if you do it over a 3 to 6 month period, you can teach them anomaly within their spending habits.
Yeah, 100%. And I think one of the big challenges you're going to notice too is when you start on this, life is going to chuck a few, you know, curveballs at you. You know, unplanned expenses, friends that all of a sudden need to borrow money, you know, family that, you know, drama, whatever it is, you know, mates that decide to go on holidays, you know, last minute, and it's somewhere, you know, you really want to go and they want you to come and you can't miss it because you're one of the boys. All that's going to be hit at you, you know. So really that is life testing you, you know, and testing your discipline routine. But actually that's the stuff that you need to avoid. You know, certainly in the initial phases, you need to stick to your discipline as best as possible, because, you know, the more you break it, and look, breaking it doesn't mean, you know, it's a setback. It's not the end. And unfortunately, most people see it as, you know, their first mistake they make, oh, that's it, can't do it, didn't work, you know, no good. And it's like, you're going to do that, I can tell you. Very few people that, and I'm sure you're the same, you know, in that 30, 60, 90 days, whatever it is, are going to religiously stick to it, you know, and never falter. You know, we are going to falter, and you are going to falter. But the trick is to get back on the horse and keep riding, you know? Yeah.
Listen, we're all human. We're not going to stay on track all the time. There's no difference going to the gym and doing a regular basis and want to get fit and eating healthily. Every now and again, you're going to have a few days that you skip, you have a cheat meal. That's just life. It doesn't mean that you can't get back on the routine. We're all human. You know, we all make hiccups every now and again. But the principle is you carry on doing it and becoming it routine.
Yep.
It happens automatically. You don't even think about it. And your life changes automatically for the benefit. You know, we have been in lockdown, most of us. We've all had to adjust what we do. We've certainly been adjusting our spending. So when we come out of lockdown, doesn't mean we have to start buying everything. It means that we've now been put into a different kind of routine, and we can start to make these savings, especially when our income goes back to where it was. We've been living on this, and now we have more money to start investing in doing the things that we never thought we could have done before. So let's take this as a learning time and an area to improve ourselves as well as improve our finances.
100%, yeah, 100%. And look, you know, one of the other things too for this whole thing is, you know, yeah, you may have setbacks, get back on the horse, you know, but the reality is if you can, find a mentor or a coach or, you know, a group that actually is going to keep you going and keep you motivated and keep you accountable. So, you know, and that may well be that you send an email to your mates, you know, that you trust, and it may not even be your mates. It may be, you know, whoever, someone who is going to support you and say, this is what I'm going to do, you know, and this is how I'm going to do it. It may be your family, you know. But the reality is bringing that mentor group, that coach in, you know, is going to help you stay on, you know, the straight path. And it's interesting because, you know, you think, I do martial arts, we do karate with the kids, and I remember with the kids, when they first started out, they had no idea what they're doing. They had no body awareness, they weren't doing, you know, they just hadn't done anything. But it was amazing, and they kept wanting to give up because they were no good at it, because they saw everyone who was advanced, you know, in the higher belts, and they were thinking, well, that's so easy for them. And, you know, these guys are, you know, I've got a four-year-old, yeah, so I think he started at 4, and 6 and 8 they started, you know. So, but the 4-year-old, you know, now after doing it for probably 18 months, well, I think he's a blue belt and doing like amazing. And, you know, it's like anything, you know, you start out, you're going to be an incompetent, bumbling idiot, yeah. But as you practice it and as you get better at it, you know, it becomes easier and easier and easier, and it becomes effortless in the end. And that's the point you've got to get to, the unconscious competence. You know, if you haven't looked at the Johari window, I think it's called. It's the Johari, I don't think it's the Johari window. Anyway, whatever it is.
It's a 4 key stage of learning anything. So, it's a 4 key stage that go through learning anything. But the truth is, anybody that's really successful, whether it be in sport or in business, have mentors or coaches around them. So if you look at sports people, for people to get to the top of their game in every sport, is tennis, cricket, badminton, rowing, football, they all have coaches or mentors get them to a high level, push you to a level that you wouldn't do yourself.
Yeah.
And in business, people like Richard Branson and Alan have their mentors around them, their coaches, and part of those mentors and coaches are the professionals that they engage around them, that have the knowledge and have the expertise that allow them to get even further than they would have done by themselves. So a coach and a mentor could be the people in your peer group that help you support your professionals that you're with. But all of us, when you go to the gym, you have somebody that shows you around you, pushes you to a level that you would have not done yourself.
Yeah.
That's what we're designed to do. We want to be pushed to have a better version of who we really are.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, it's the thing I love about this is it's so damn easy. It literally is going, what is your take-home income? And choose one of those models and just go multiply by 50% or whatever it is, whatever percentage, and then put that into a separate bank account or a separate jar or whatever works for you. And that's what you need to do. Make it a game, make it fun. Because when you do that, it's so damn easy. And actually what you realize, 3 months down the track, if you do this, you're going to look back and go, bloody hell, that just changed my life. Not for just 3 months, but for my life. And I've seen it happen so many times. I've seen people go on, I've done this process with people, 19-year-olds that at 21 have gone and bought a house. Most 21s are too busy getting into debt, not buying houses. This stuff works, and it is actually pretty easy to do. The issue is that it's simple to do. It's not easy because you're changing a lot of programming and you're confronting a lot of your bad habits and a lot of, your behaviors that shouldn't, that are not serving you and things like that. And it may be going against what your parents taught you, what your, school, your social group, all that sort of stuff taught you, which is, part of the issue. But I can tell you, it is worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely make it fun, make it into a game, and your results will come much quicker.
Yeah. Cool, guys. So, I think that's it for today, unless you got anything else. But I think, jump on.
It's enough to get started with.
Yeah, cool. So look, guys, you've got 4 models there. Pick one of them, have a go at it, and especially now with the lockdown, it's so easy because you're already, changed. So why not just put some structure around that change and have some real value added to the lockdown, But yeah. But guys, look, if you're interested, you've got our YouTube sites. Be sure to subscribe. We're doing these every Thursday live this time, and basically join us. Subscribe. If you've got any questions, if you want to download our books, the links are actually in the description. And we'll see you next week. All right, thanks, mate.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye.
Yes.
Okay.